There we go. Wonderful. Now I'm ready.
Oh, great. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to call to order this special board meeting for the Council on Aging on Friday, January 10th. We are here today with Caitlin Coyle and Beth Rouleau from the UMASS School of Gerontology, and we have partnered with them for their leadership, expertise, and guidance on the Town of Wellesley needs assessment. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to you. And thank you both very, very much for being here.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for, thanks for being here. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit more about us and who we are, and then get into really the overview of the project that we've proposed to complete for the town of Wellesley, some specifics around what we are planning to do and when, and how the town can be helpful to us in this process. So as Kathleen mentioned, we're from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, the Gerontology Institute there. We've been a center for about 12 years, and over the course of those 12 years, we've worked with about 85 cities and towns across Massachusetts on various endeavors to engage their communities around conversations about aging in place, aging in community. It takes all different shapes and sizes, but we have been doing this for about 12 years. In addition to that work, we also do things like produce the Elder Economic Security Index, which is a cost of living metric for the entire United States. That's a more realistic cost of what it actually takes to age in community, as well as other projects. So we take a very applied approach to our work, and one of the things I think is really helpful and something I want to make sure is really clear to you all today is that we are partners in this work. We are not sort of typical consultants in the sense that we go off and do a bunch of things and then come back with a report. We're really looking for you guys to walk this process with us, and we'll work together to make sure that the project is going to be most appropriate and helpful to you all here in Wellesley. We have some sort of methodological expertise and recommendations, but we will be looking to you all for some insight as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Beth Rouleau is with me. She's going to be sort of my right hand on this project, and so you'll be seeing her name and hearing from her. We also have a team of graduate students and undergraduate students who help us back at the university with things like data entry, and they might join a focus group to take notes, things like that. So you'll see them sort of flitter in and out of the project as we go forward. So that's just a little bit. My background is public health and gerontology, and that's just really a little bit about us, how we like to work together, and sort of who you might see along the way. So with that, I'm going to sort of just dive in right to sort of why we're here, which is to talk about this needs assessment that the town of Wellesley has commissioned. And that's being motivated by several things. One, we know there's broadly these trends, people want to age in their communities, so we believe there's desire for people to age in Wellesley. We also know that this older adult population in Wellesley is significant in terms of its share of the population as a whole, and that that's expected to continue, if not grow in size. As people are living longer, they're living healthier, and they're staying in community. We also know that here in the United States, we refer to older adults as people age 60 and over. And when we think about that age cutoff, you know, there's at least 3 to 5 generations of people in that 60 plus category, and they have really wide-ranging life experiences, needs, preferences, desires, goals, etc. And so that sort of shifting perspective, that shifting sort of context of the older adult population is also a reason to do a needs assessment, to really engage the community today and say, what's going on with you now? What are the issues you're facing? What are the things that you want to see more of? That would, you know, how can we make this community a better place for you based on your experiences today? So those are some of the rationales that led us to this needs assessment. And we hope, we expect that the results of this needs assessment will do a few things. One, will support Wellesley's ability to apply and be designated as an age and dementia-friendly community, which I'll talk about very briefly in a second, but also to inform the Council on Aging as it thinks about planning for the future related to programming and services, making sure that things that happen here at the center are aligning with the community's needs and experiences. It's also our hope that the data that we collect for this project will be helpful to the town more broadly. One of the things we take into account in our work is that aging doesn't just affect what happens here at the center. It influences people's lives in all different ways, and it certainly affects the town in other ways beyond what happens here at the senior center. And so, for example, our survey often includes areas around questions about housing, about health, about transportation, about socioeconomic security, about outdoor spaces and sort of physical accessibility of the community, et cetera. And so we believe that that information will be helpful to other departments as well, and also raise awareness about some of the issues facing older adults in the community. So I mentioned that one of the goals was this age and dementia-friendly designation, and I just wanted to do a quick sort of rundown of what that is. And essentially, back in 2002, the WHO, the World Health Organization, recognized some demographic shifts that were happening worldwide, one of which people living longer, so just human longevity, and what we call sort of the compression of morbidity, people staying healthier longer and having fewer years of poor health, but also that people want to go back to the community. They want to age in community. They want to be near amenities and be near other people. So they said, we want to put together some recommendations to how communities can become more age-friendly. So they brought together all these experts, and essentially they came up with these 8 domains of livability, of age-friendliness, which are often depicted by this flower image that I show here. And it's really the goal of which is to create a community where people can participate, stay connected, and remain healthy and active no matter their age or ability. And it's really rooted in active aging, and so trying to facilitate sort of the physical participation, the social participation of residents in their community as they choose. There's a process to that. One of the first steps is a needs assessment. So the idea here is that the needs assessment that we're talking about could be used in application for an age and dementia-friendly designation if the town so chooses to do that, and we will use this broad framework of age friendliness to guide the content of the needs assessment. So the domains are many of the things I've already mentioned: housing, transportation, outdoor spaces and buildings, respect and social inclusion, communication and information, social participation, and community supports and health services, which encompasses much of what happens on the service side of things here at the Council on Aging. Dementia Friendly was a separate initiative that was developed but has really been adopted as you're going through the process of becoming age-friendly, really overlaying the perspective of someone living with memory impairment or their families in everything that you do. So this idea that as we think about housing, is it housing that's affordable, appropriate, accessible, not just for people who are of a particular age, but also for people of varying mobility, statuses, and also cognitive statuses. So it's really just making sure that we're thinking about dementia as one of the versions of aging when we think about people in Wellesley. So that framework is going to kind of loosely guide us in the background as far as we think about the kinds of questions we're going to be asking. So what are we planning to do? This is just sort of the components of what we have proposed, the first of which is a demographic profile of the town. We use the American Community Survey, which is a product of the U.S. Census Bureau. It's done each year between the decennial census. It allows us to look at things like living arrangement, race, ethnicity, household income, race, I said race, ethnicity, marital status, employment status, some more details. And we do this because it's helpful for us, number one, in the beginning. We do it for all ages. So it helps us understand who's living here, who is the community of Wellesley from a demographic perspective, both for our own learning, but also to put the needs of older adults in context of the broader community. So that's kind of one of the first things that we do. And we also will conduct 5 key informant interviews. These are the way I describe a key informant, which I know sounds very impressive to be a key informant, is that they either have decision-making power in the community or they have a really sort of unique perspective. So this typically includes select board members, town employees who just like department chairs, et cetera, like planners sometimes, or the Council on Aging director. It also includes usually the police and fire chief are key informants because they really have a very sort of specific perspective on the community and can speak to how aging is impacting the community in particular ways. And so we end up doing about 5 of those, and we will work together with you to decide exactly who those people should be here in Wellesley. It's not, I'm giving you some examples of who's typically in these conversations, but we're gonna be sort of thinking collaboratively about who in Wellesley should be part of those interviews. I will say that one of the values of those conversations is both for us to get the information that we're looking for, but also to educate the folks who we're interviewing about this project, about the value of the age and dementia-friendly model, about the fact, sort of having the conversation about aging happening outside the 4 walls of the senior center. So I always find them to be really rich conversations because it's really sort of a mutual exchange of we're learning from them, but they're equally learning from us. We also plan to do 3 focus groups. These are smaller, as you can imagine, group conversations with people who have a particular lived experience. So the only thing that's required of a focus group participant is that they have something in common with the other members of the focus group. And it could literally be that they just all live in Wellesley. That might be the only thing they have in common, and that's fine. But that's sort of what I think about as what distinguishes a focus group from just any old conversation. I also think of these as opportunities for us to hear about particular experiences in Wellesley. So, for example, if there is, oftentimes caregivers might have a really specific experience of living in a community, so we might think about a group of people who are providing care to someone. It might be a particular race or ethnic group. It might be people living in public housing. It might, so it's sort of thinking about who are the voices that may not respond to the survey or may not come here currently, and how can we be sure that we're hearing about their experiences in Wellesley. The other thing that I find helpful in this focus group set of activities is I always try to include at least one focus group that is made up of people who I'm going to call community stakeholders. So the other thing that's hard about this work is that we only hear from the people who are willing to be heard from. And we know there are people in the community who aren't going to return a survey. They're not coming here. They're not maybe participating, but we know that their experiences are important to understand as well. So people who are more socially isolated, for example, or homebound. So we try to do a focus group of people. If we can't get them in a room, we try to do the next best thing, which is to get people in a room who do have some contact with those folks. So that includes things like faith community leaders, home health workers, sometimes the tax assessor or lawyers, or real estate agents actually often have some perspective. So people who are kind of the eyes and the ears of the community who might be able to speak to some of those more vulnerable segments of the community. I try to save one of those focus groups for them. Those will happen. The stakeholder one can be done on Zoom depending on sort of who's invited, but the resident focus groups will be done in person. I should mention that the key informant interviews can be done in either via Zoom or in person, sort of at the discretion of the participant. So those things will happen. And then finally, we have the community survey of residents age 60 and older in Wellesley. And for those of you, I'll just talk a little bit about the sort of logistics of that survey. So we will obtain the mailing list of residents from the town clerk based on the most recent local census. And we will draw a random sample of residents, 5,000 residents, age 60 and older in Wellesley. Those people will receive by mail a postcard. It's about 5 by 7. It's yellow with black text. They'll receive a postcard that says you're being invited to participate in a survey. This is why, very briefly. If you have questions, you can call us. We usually put ourselves in that role in terms of fielding questions from the community. And also if it'll probably include information about where they can find the survey online, if they would like to do it online, and the fact that they can call us and do it over the phone. About a week later, they will receive the actual survey. That will include a cover letter from the town. We can decide who that author should be. Could be the Council on Aging, could be the town the select board could be I don't know if you have a manager or an administrator, town executive director. So it'd be probably from the executive director explaining what are we doing, why are we doing it, why is it important that people participate on town letterhead, making it look, that it's legitimate. It will also include the survey itself printed and a return envelope that is free postage, so prepaid postage. So the idea is that people will be able to complete the survey, put it in the mail, it will come back to us at UMass. It will also reiterate to the recipient that they can also call us at UMass to do it over the telephone if they would like, or they can go online if they would prefer to do that. I will say that that's a random sample of 5,000 residents. We will also make the online version of the survey available to anyone. So that can be put on the town website. It can be sent out via all the ways that links are shared, social media, email blasts, etc. And we want as many people to complete it as possible. And we also will have the ability to deal with people who are not 60 and older who complete it. In fact, meaning that we'll be able to sort of identify them in the analysis, et cetera. And so we'll be open to anyone. And so the survey is often, I'll get to the timeline in a second, but essentially that's the survey process. All of those surveys come back to us. This is where the undergraduates come in. They enter all that data by hand, they double check it, and that becomes sort of our analytic file. Including in the survey, there are often some open-ended questions where people can tell us, usually it's things like, what do you value about living in Wellesley, or what are the things that are most challenging to you? We will review all of those. We will, I saw someone say traffic back there, or at least mouth it, and I'm sure we'll hear about that. But anyway, we will review all of those. We will categorize them by theme, and we will use those as quotes in the report so that you'll have both the quantitative information from the survey, but also in their own words, qualitative quotations from the survey, but also from the focus groups and interviews. So all the information is going to be sort of triangulated upon and made into a report in a final sort of set of slides that will be used to talk about the results. It also will include recommendations, and I will just say that those recommendations are not prescriptive, right? I mean, they are going to be based on our experience and our expertise and the needs that we uncover in Wellesley. We will put forth some ideas as to how the town can begin to address some of the issues that were raised, but they are by no means a laundry list or a checklist of things to do. They, I think, in most cases are really meant to sort of empower you all to sort of take the information, give you some sense of where to start with ideas about how to address the issues, but then to eventually feed into a more detailed strategic plan or age-friendly action plan, et cetera. So I just want to kind of put that out there up front. So this is the timeline of the project, and you'll see there's 3 colored boxes. The blue boxes indicate things that UMass is going to do entirely, basically on the things we're responsible for. The yellow box are places where we're going to need somebody from Wellesley to sort of step up and be responsible for those items. And then the things in gray are things that places where we will come together and work together. So you can see we're in January. We are doing our first gray box today, where we are meeting to finalize sort of the scope of work and kind of kick off the timeline. And we're also working on the IRB approval. I will say for the IRB approval, this is something we always do. Because we're at a university, they just want to make sure we're not out in the community pestering people on behalf of UMass. So I have to just let them know what I'm doing and where I'm doing it. And they say, okay, you've been, I've been sort of licensed, I can do human subjects research in Wellesley, that's okay, they know I'm out here. So it's really a formality, but I also think it gives some insurance to the participants that their data and their information will be handled appropriately and remain confidential. And so that's, now in January, we will be also in the process of drafting the survey now and in next month, with really the goal of trying to get together in early March to sit down and review the survey with, usually what's a good idea is like a subcommittee or a smaller group of people who are interested in participating in that survey review. We will go through every question. So we have a standard survey that we often start from, but we will go through every question. We'll explain to you why we're asking it, what we're going to do with the data on the back end, and you'll have the opportunity to say, I don't really think that's relevant here in Wellesley, or this is actually how we refer to our regional transportation locally, kind of give it the local feel so that so residents of Wellesley will connect with the content of the survey. And it's also a place where you can add questions that you're like super interested in. For example, one community really wanted to know if people had generators, like how many people do and don't. So things like that. It's the opportunity to sort of tailor it for the town of Wellesley. So we want to get that going. We will send that survey out about a week or 10 days before we meet. So you'll have time to review it and bring your questions and feedback. And that meeting will be sort of laborious, but very productive. And the idea is that survey will go out in April, early April, and I'll talk more specifically about that. In the meantime, we'd also like to get started on key informants. So Beth and I, once we get the mailing and everything worked out, we can start reaching out to the key informants. So thinking about who those people should be is among one of the first tasks that we'll be looking for folks in Wellesley to help us with. And that we'll be doing that over the spring as well. We are going to do the focus groups sort of while the survey is out. So while people are completing the survey, typically the survey is open for about 3 weeks, give or take. It is not a hard deadline. We will have to print a deadline because everyone needs a deadline. But you should all just know that when the deadline passes and someone comes to the front desk and says, oh, I forgot to do my survey, or I just found it under my pile of mail, send it in, send it in, send it in. For up to weeks after the deadline is over, we want them to just keep coming in. But that deadline will be, I'll get to that in a second, so that'll be open for mostly the month of April, and then we will move to doing the focus groups sort of late spring, early summer, really spending a lot of the sort of June and July months getting the data entered and analyzed with the hopes of having a final report to deliver to you all by the end of September. And that'll be an opportunity for you all again to think about who do you want to share the results with and how, if you want to do a public presentation or if you want to have a smaller sort of more strategic planning conversation, et cetera. But that's going to be sort of take us to the end of the proposed timeline. These are some key dates, some key time points that I've mentioned already. March being that we want to get together to draft the survey and talk about it, and that we need to be able to submit the survey to our printer by March 24th in order for it to be mailed on April 8th. The postcard is proposed to go out April 1st. You can imagine that means it will go out on April 1st. It goes out of a mail house out of Quincy, actually. So it won't hit mailboxes until at least a couple of days after the 1st. So the 1st is when it will be sent out. You probably won't it won't hit mailboxes for a couple of days. The other place where we will be needing some support from you all is really that survey outreach piece, which will be happening in April. This is putting something in the newsletter, potentially filming something for public cable, if there is a local newspaper, if you're so lucky to have one of those still. I'm seeing some no's. An online local paper, maybe put something in there, but also social media posts, making announcements here if there's any kind of events that happen to be happening, either select board meetings or just other kinds of townwide events, making announcements there. And then a good old word of mouth, encouraging your friends, neighbors, family members to do it. That will be a place where we're going to be leaning on you all to help us. Response rates. So I know I'm stealing all your questions. Everyone's got these questions. So I mentioned, we'll do a random sample of 5,000. We say that 20% response rate is sort of satisfactory, but we typically get closer to 30%, so it's usually like 25 to 30% response rate very consistently. And so I would anticipate, and some of that, no pressure, but some of that will be dependent on the outreach that you're all able to help us do, right? So But that is, so I would expect at least 1,000 surveys to come back to us, if not more than that. Let's see. So the deadline will be May 2nd. So the printed deadlines will be, so on the survey it will say, please complete this by May 2nd, which I don't remember the day of the week that is at the moment, but there's that. And then, like I said, sort of the summer will be kind of pulling everything together. We'll have a final report and be able to come back with the presentation of results by the end of September. So that is sort of the rundown of why we're doing this, what we're doing, and how we're going to do it. But I'm happy to have some questions or discussion.
Excuse me. We want to make sure we offer you the format that works best for you.
Yeah.
Is this where you feel the initial introduction to the work that will be happening
Yep.
is complete for purposes of promoting? This will be uploaded on the Wellesley Media channel tomorrow.
Right.
If there are more personal sort of
Yeah.
tactical questions
Right.
that you want to have more confidential, we can certainly
Yeah.
let Luke know that this would be the completion of the video part of this.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction, Kathleen. And what I'd say is I will take any questions that people have about what I've presented so far. And then we do have a couple sort of just housekeeping things
That's what I
we
was gonna
want to
say,
get.
housekeeping,
We want to just sort of get some response from you all that we can do offline. But I guess before I close it out with Luke, maybe just if anyone in the audience has any questions about what I've shared. Judy.
Hi, I have a question. How do you deal with non-response bias? It seems to me if you're doing a random sample, you have some control over the population, and then you can do a comparison of say, by age, the people who responded, those who didn't respond. But why would you also want to open it up to more people than the random sample? Then you have no control over the non-response bias.
Yes, good questions. So one, we do have a little control in the sense that anybody who is not in the mailing list will be forced to do it online. And so we'll be able to at least compare the online responses to the copies we get back by mail from the 5,000 random samples. So we have a little bit, not perfect. And then we're also able to compare who we did hear from to the mailing list and to the population of Wellesley as a whole to understand who did we hear from, who didn't we hear from, and be able to account and highlight for the reader and the consumer the fact that it is or isn't representative based on age. Usually age and gender and race are about the only things we can do that comparison for. And we open it to everyone, mostly because we don't want to say no to people. It's an opportunity to hear from people of any age. And so it's also more just sort of like an inclusion. There will be, so the other thing I'll say is there's more than 5,000 residents 60 plus in Wellesley. So there's going to be a number of people who are going to say, I didn't get a survey. And we don't want to say, well, we don't want to hear from you. We want to be able to say, you can do it online. And the other thing I didn't mention, which we can talk about, is having some printed.
That's what I was going to ask you if you want.
Yeah, we could do a Dropbox or something here for people to do it and then coordinate it that way. Thank you. Oh.
I have another question.
Okay.
I did a lot of focus group and survey work when I was working professionally. A lot of times you use the focus group to inform how are you going to do the study. Now, you're doing it in the opposite way, the opposite order, but I suspect you have some knowledge of things you learned through focus groups, issues that came up in other towns that you might reflect then in the survey instrument that you use.
Yes. I mean, I think the way that we think about focus groups, so the larger context of that question, I think, is that when you ask someone what it takes to age well in a community, the answers are going to largely be the same, whether they live here or somewhere else. They need housing that's appropriate and affordable. They need to be able to get around. They want to maintain their independence. They need enough money to not worry about things, etc. And so the questions and that age-friendly framework that's guiding us will largely drive the type of questions that we're asking. The focus groups really allow us to put the Wellesley context to bear. You know, it's really about explaining why not having enough money to pay for prescriptions is so problematic. What is it, you know, that kind of thing. So it's less about what should we be asking about. It's more informing how do those issues differentially affect Wellesley. So it's not, so focus groups can be used for different purposes, and one of which is the one that you laid out. But I think for us, it's more about, we kind of know what the issues are to ask about, but what we don't know is how they manifest here locally. Yes, Kathleen?
Pair B.
Oh, Institutional Review Board.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about what I've shared this morning? Yes.
A little bit more of a technical question as far as those people who fill it out. If we're going to be sending out survey links, can you differentiate from who fills it out? Like, do you have like a QR code so anyone who fills it out online that they saw it on the town website?
Oh, like where they came from?
Correct.
No. The only thing we have is IP address. So we can see, for example, if you set up a computer here that people can take it on, we might see, oh, we've got 30 survey responses from the same IP address. And we can verify whether that was, you know, you guys or a library or something like that. We also don't limit it in terms of IP address. So we could say only one survey response per IP address, but somebody in a household with more than one resident 60 and older, a couple, for example, we want both of them to be able to respond, and so we don't limit that. And the same thing with computers here or computers at the library, public computers that multiple people might be completing the survey from. So, but to answer your question about like where did they come from, how did they get to us, no, we can't track that. Yes, Kathleen?
Caitlin, question.
Yeah.
So as you, I'm sure, have experienced, COAs have patrons that attend from other towns.
Yes.
I can assume it is important for us to communicate this only to known Wellesley residents. You're not looking for feedback or respondents coming from, like, somebody that might be in here, see
Right.
it, and not live in this town.
That's right.
Okay.
So usually one of the first questions on the survey is how long you've lived in Wellesley. And we have one of those answer options is I do not live in Wellesley. And so I would say that I never like to, I don't like to, I wouldn't necessarily say people from Wellesley can't complete the survey, but just know that if they do, we will be able to kick them out based on that question. So we'll be able to sort of put them in the analysis and take them out of the analysis, et cetera. And also we and this is something we can discuss when we talk about the survey, is we are interested in often knowing, do people, even Wellesley residents, go elsewhere to other COAs to participate?
No, I think that the question was more, obviously anybody can filter
Yeah.
who their audience is or who their recipients are through email blasts. That's, I think
I see.
the issue is we're not looking to compound the work you folks will have by not filtering and sending out to the universe to whom we communicate.
I see.
And that was what I was looking for from you. Because we have patrons that come from probably, 5 or 6 other communities.
Yeah, we wouldn't necessarily be targeting them for the survey completion, unless there was a particular reason why that you would want to know from something about them. But no, it is meant to be for Wellesley residents. Oh,
No, I was just going to say current Wellesley residents.
current.
Yeah, we have people that have moved from Wellesley.
And
but
still
might
come back.
And so I think that would be an important distinction.
Yeah. Corinne?
Yes, I was just going to sort of piggyback on what you said, Pat, in that perhaps it'd be nice to have people who have moved out of Wellesley, because they would have a firmer opinion of why they needed to move out. I mean, maybe to be closer to their children, but maybe it was because economically or the services that were being offered aren't adequate. I mean, I don't, that would
Yeah,
be
I
my
think that's
view.
certainly a good perspective to consider, given what we know about the way of the world and how anybody can stay in a particular community. But I think that kind of conversation might be best in a focus group, meaning that as opposed to encouraging their survey response, which I guess all of this is to say, if they respond to the survey, it's fine. We'll figure out a way to account for that, and if we get enough of them, we could even look at how they might be different than the Wellesley residents. But I think if we really wanted to understand the former resident perspective, if we decided that that was a priority voice for us, or even if it was just we wanted to include those folks in this project, we could invite them to a focus group to share their experience, because I think that's a little bit more qualitative in terms of why did you leave and what was hard, and that might not come through in a survey, I guess is what I'm saying.
Excuse me, I have another question. You were saying that, you were hoping that 60+ the seniors would answer, and then you said those who are on the sunny side of 60, you would like to have them answer as well, or take the survey. My question is, when I was on the sunny side of 60, I really wasn't cluing in on, what the Council on Aging was
I will
doing,
tell you that a
'cause
lot of
thinking,
people on the
"Can I
other
get
side of
there?"
60 have no interest in taking a survey. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, how do we reach out to them? Do we send it out, or send a notice like in the utility bill saying you can go online and take this survey because it's previews of coming attractions?
Right.
That type of thing.
Yeah, I think the first question I would ask you all or ask myself is how important, on what priority level is hearing from younger people based on the goals for the project? Meaning so if we don't do any outreach to young people under 60, and I would say we will maybe get 20 responses of people under 60, just naturally, people who stumble across it, yada, yada. And so we won't really be able to do much with that. And so it'll likely just be moot. I would argue that the more important demographic to think about is people 60 to 69, because those are folks who are in the sample, but don't identify with coming here. So I would recommend we focus our efforts on that group as opposed to the younger group, but all of that can be sort of decided. I just want to reiterate that the target population for this project is 60+. We're opening it to the rest of the community because we can and because we think it's a good opportunity to make sure people feel included. Marlene?
Yes, I have a question about the different age groups. You mentioned 60 to 69. My experience going through these age groups is that the perspective so changes as one ages, and so the younger elders versus the older elders bring up different points. Do you separate data based on those specific, and what are your age groups?
Yep. Yes is the first answer. We do. In fact, the appendix of all of our reports is usually every survey question cross-tabbed by age. So you'll see how the different age groups responded to each question, and then anything that's particularly interesting or whatever will get pulled up into the main report, but you will have that data by age for everything because of that very issue, that it's so important for us to think about how people differ across age groups and not think about everyone as the same. The age groups we typically use, and this is all, again, can be discussed and debated and decided, are on the survey, we do 60 to 64, 65 to 69, but in the analysis, I usually lump them into decades. So it's usually people 60 to 69, 70 to 79, depending, 80 to 89, and then 90 plus. Sometimes we do 80 plus, depending on the distribution of respondents. So it's usually in those categories. But then, as I mentioned, so the survey age groups might be more, there might be more of them, but in the analysis, I usually consolidate them into something that is a little bit more manageable. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think.
No, go ahead, you finish.
I was just going to say thank you. I think that's going to conclude sort of the recorded portion of our conversation, and I'm happy to stick around to talk more informally.
Thank you both very, very much. Can I ask you to send me a copy of the PowerPoint, and I'll distribute it to the board. and to
Absolutely.
Deb?
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, second? Susan's okay, second. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
Thank you.